Approaching the age of 30, Prince Siddhartha Gautama decides to leave the protection of his palace and head out for the first time, as legends say, onto the streets of his city. There, over a 4-day period, he dramatically encounters what are called the 4 ego-devastating signs. He sees a sick man and for the first time is appalled to discover that everyone gets sick. He sees an old man and is horrified to discover that all get old. He sees a dead man and is shocked to learn that even the most privileged die. Then he sees a truth seeker, a yogi, or perhaps a wandering hermit monk, and realizes that there is a path leading to something more. Sheltered as he's been, he's never known these things before. After taking it all in, despite the luxuries he's been accustomed to, with great resolution he abandons his home determined to find that greater truth and bring back something of value for all, or die in the attempt. Prior to the birth of Siddhartha, whose name means every wish fulfilled, a sage predicted that if the child were kept from knowledge of impermanence, he would become a world ruler. If not, he would renounce worldly power and become the Buddha. King Suddhodana, wanting his son Siddhartha to become that great king, did all he could to keep him from the truth. So the prince grew up knowing only happiness and pleasure. But can even the most sheltered child know only contentment? Does the sun always only shine? Is a toe never stubbed? Does a pet never die, a chill wind never blow? Siddhartha's father was fighting the losing battle of a man taking up arms against the sea. When Prince Siddhartha walked out of his palace and found that everything is as impermanent as dust on the wind, he was plunged into despair. Then he rallied, determined to live with open eyes without taking refuge in trance, fantasy, cynicism, or hedonism. He could not accept any version of when you get to heaven it will make sense to you. His driving question became, is there a path based on facts that leads to freedom now? With his experience of the 4 signs, aging, sickness, death, and a truth seeker, Siddhartha's road to world rule was demolished. Shocked, dismayed, and then determined to find an answer, he left his home, wife, newborn son, father, foster mother, and all his luxuries and attendants. He may have felt hope as well as some sense that he was being pushed by circumstance onto the very road he'd been unconsciously seeking all along. He wasn't running away, but trying to find that way that would benefit all, including his wife and child, like a soldier going off to fight out of necessity. His faith in what was familiar and comfortable had been shattered. In a sense, he wasn't leaving home, stripped of everything, he no longer had a home. The destined path reveals itself, and the safety and security of the old homestead are gone, entirely gone. Prince Siddhartha already stood at the edge of the vast, empty ground of reality. Yet it would still take even him 6 more years of intensely focused practice before the truth would be clear. For now, with the overwhelming loss of all the young prince had previously known and believed, he enters the first gate of noble truth, the gate of anguish. With the 4 signs, the solid walls that had sheltered, protected, and isolated him are smashed to rubble. He sees that there is no haven from the universal catastrophe. Illness might be prevented and aging slowed, but all must eventually swirl down the great drain of death. His sense of entitlement and safety is stripped away. No longer an onlooker, exposed and vulnerable, he finds that he's been living a dream. His attractive life was actually a painted corpse. Prince Siddhartha's mind was blown open, seeing afresh what had been hiding in plain sight. Perhaps he exclaimed with this beginner's mind, the sick man. Ah, the pity of such a life. The old woman. Alas, for the painful ugliness of such a life. When was it that we first wised up, got slugged between the eyes by the ordinary truth that everyone gets sick? When were we gut-punched by the realization that even our own cherished bodies would stiffen with age? When were we stunned to understand down to the ventricles of our heart that everyone, the pilot, bus driver, waiter, our partner, or child, will die and no amount of wealth or success can prevent it? How many times did we walk out of our own ordinary palace thinking ourselves well protected before our walls came crashing down? For Siddhartha, the privileged kid from the rich side of the tracks, it hit him at the age of 29, over an intense 3 or 4 day period. The 4th sign Siddhartha saw was probably not a monk. There was no Buddhism yet. What he saw was someone on the way who, having survived the crashing down of their own palace walls, was walking with peace, dignity, even serenity amidst the rubble. When the Bodhisattva saw that, he realized that what he thought was the end of his road might only be the beginning. Siddhartha's devastation was complete. It is ripeness, the blossoming of seeds he'd planted long ago. The 4 ego-devastating signs were the ringing of his own set alarm clock: wake up. Wake up. Time to finish the job and realize enlightenment for the benefit of all. Prince Siddhartha didn't leave home to become spiritual. It wasn't, "I've seen impermanence. Now I'm going to get enlightened." It was a more like, "How can I go on? I must go on." But young Prince Siddhartha says more, "I will find a way that aids not just myself, but all." Even for the Buddha, dying to the old world, being stripped of everything he'd held dear, was hard. He was human, after all. Yet in that difficulty something was waking up. In losing everything, he'd found again a road to what he'd never even consciously known he'd lost. But he didn't think his way to liberation. He wasn't a philosopher. He was a realizer, someone who'd had enough and decided to do the work needed to wake up. The first truth is noble not because its pain is ennobling, but because it's a first step on the journey of waking up to all the good that's even now beneath our feet. It's where Dharma practice begins.